Do you want?
No, we actually started.
Pete, can you hear me?
I think
Yeah, no,
so.
there-
Oh, there we go.
That sounds
All
good.
right. Okay, it being 6 o'clock, I'm going to call this August 23rd, 2021 meeting of the Chelmsford Select Board to order. Could we open with the pledge, please? Up first, we have our public service announcements. I don't see an attachment. Is there- Do you want to just make the announcement? Oh, Pat's coming.
I don't mind. So the Chelmsford Fire Department is having a day of remembrance for 9/11. It will be at the 9/11 Memorial outside, 50 Billwrecker Road, and that will be September 11th at 8:30 a.m.
Okay, that brings us to public input. Is there anyone who has any general public input?
Just a side note. Ledge Road, is that public?
Yeah, we invited them to come speak during that segment.
Oh, okay.
So if you're here for the Ledge Road bus turnaround, wait until we get to that. Is there any other public input? Okay, I see none. Can we go to committee vacancies?
So for the committee vacancies as of August 23rd, 2021, the Arts and Technology Education Committee is looking to fill one 3-year term. Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee has one unexpired 3-year term and one 3-year term. The CCA Advisory Committee has 2 1-year terms. Center Village Master Plan Implementation Committee has 1 1-year term. The new Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee has 3 1-year terms, 3 2-year terms, and 3 3-year terms. Commissions on Disabilities has 1 unexpired 3-year term and 1 3-year term. Community Action Program Committee has 2 1-year terms. The Council on Aging is looking to fill 1 3-year term and 5 associate member positions, staggered in 3-year terms, ending on the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, 2022, 23, and 24. The Cultural Council has 2 3-year terms ending June 30th, 2024. The Finance Committee has 1 3-year term. The Holiday Decorating Committee is looking to fill 1 1-year term. The Parade Committee welcomes all applicants to 1-year terms. Permanent Building Committee is looking to fill 1 unexpired 3-year seat. Public Celebrations Committee has 5 1-year seats available. Recycling Committee, 1 1-year term. Tree Committee, 1 unexpired 3-year term and 1 3-year term. If you have any interest in applying for any of these committees, please feel free to go online to the town website and complete an application, or you can reach out directly to the town manager's office at 50 Billwrecker Road here in this building, or you can call 978-250-5202. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Okay, next up, we have the license for Dodie's Diner. If you'd like to say something, could you come to the podium, please? And we just need your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Paul Dodie, and I'm in the process of remodeling the old Chelmsford Diner and making a Dodie's Diner, which is my last name. I owned a diner in Westford for 18 years called Paul's Diner, and I sold that 3 years ago. So, and all of a sudden I get the surge to come back after retiring. So now I think you'll be very happy what you see in the new diner as we tore it apart and remodeled it to make it a really nice place to come. I've been very lucky. I had some friends. I think we signed the lease about early August, and we've been going at it since then. And I have friends like Tony Fernandez, Walter Dunine, and Joe Dirt have been helping me do that. So, anyways, I am so happy. I live in Chelmsford for 43 years. I can't wait to serve the residents of Chelmsford. I probably served quite a few of them over at Paul's Diner in Westford, but I'm so happy to be here and be part of the Chelmsford way of life and make the Dodie's Diner the place where you come in Chelmsford.
Thank you.
For you, if it's half as good as the one at Westford, it'll be great.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Does anyone have any questions or comments?
So you're ready to open right now?
No, we're going to probably open, I'm searching for the second week in September.
Oh, okay.
I just want to make sure we're all set. We just finished today with a lot of, my brain just went dead. This is when you get old. I should say, about second week in September, I think. We're very, very close in finishing all the painting and different remodeling things, and make it worthwhile. You won't recognize the place if you ever went into the Chelmsford Diner.
Well, I have 4 sons, and they've been to Paul's in Westford and love it. And when I told them you were coming here, them and all their high school friends can't wait, so best of luck.
The great part about when I was in Westford, I always took care of the high school. If there was, like, for the football team was having a day before the Thanksgiving Day, I donate food and things like that, and donated food to the fire department, the police department, and things like that. Make it a community place where you want to come, and really feel good about it. As the old saying, the cheers, you want to know their name. And I always thought about having that song as you open the door, you got to know your name. So, as I look around, I have to see Paul, Pat, Ken, Virginia, Mark, and George. So I got to know your names. I'm pretty good about it, but I'll be cooking a lot. I'll be in the back. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Get going back on it. The equipment came in.
That's a miracle.
I'm just getting ready to season it and start reminiscing how to make an omelet.
Anything else from the board?
So I'll make a motion that we approve the common vigilar license for Dodie's Diner at 7 Summer Street.
I'll second the motion.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Good luck, and
Thank you so much. I hope to
we're
see you
thrilled to
very
have
soon.
you.
5
Yeah,
omelets.
good luck.
Okay. The next item is any comments that we may have on the Day of Peace proclamation before we sign it, or it's scheduled to be signed at our next meeting. And I see Latosha's on the Zoom room.
I am.
So, does anyone have any comments or questions regarding the proclamation and the event? Would you like to say anything?
Hello, everyone. My name is Latasha Dixon. I'm here representing the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. We are presenting the Day of Peace proclamation. The Day of Peace is on September 21st, 2021 this year, which is a Tuesday. We have a planned event on the Town Common on September 25th, 2021 from 1 to 5 p.m. We're here to just ask for your support and ask you to sign the proclamation.
Okay. Any comments or questions? Or
Great.
does it look okay?
Looks fine to me.
Looks good.
Yeah, look good.
Okay, so we'll have it signed and we'll present it at our next meeting.
Okay, I hope to be in person at the next meeting.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have the order of taking for Ledge Road. Did you want to say anything here, Paul, or?
Yeah, we have Police Chief James Spinney joining us remotely, as well as Assistant DPW Director Steve Yonley, who can help, and Public Works Director Gary Persichetti, also joining us remotely, who can help answer any questions that the board and the public may have. As indicated on the agenda, we sent out notices to all the residents of Ledge Road, Esther Drive, and Oak Hill Road, informing them that the board would be considering the installation of the bus turnaround at tonight's meeting. As the board knows, this has sort of been a long time coming. It was delayed it was brought to town meeting at the 2020 spring annual town meeting for authorization, and it was delayed by the COVID pandemic. And the intent was to, try to have it installed for the start of the school year. That may not be possible, but if the board grants approval, the DPW will work as expeditiously as it can to constructed in a manner that would allow the buses to travel safely up and down Ledge Road in order to allow children to be picked up at their residence, given the commercial truck concerns that were present on Ledge Road, or are present on Ledge Road.
Are there any comments, questions by the board before I open it up to the public? Okay. So we're going to open this up for public comment. I'm going to ask that anyone who speak, please give your name and address for the record. This agenda item is limited to the bus turnaround. We're going to have a separate agenda item in a future meeting on the truck traffic. So if you start to go into truck traffic, I'm going to have to cut it off because of mass open meeting laws. And it's not because we don't care or we don't want to listen, it's just not the topic for this meeting. So please keep it to the bus turnaround. Okay? Thank you.
Hi, all. I'm Melissa Lauren, so I'm the property owner at 75 and 44 Ledge Road. I have recently purchased the property at 75 Ledge Road on June 26th. As I bought the property, this was obviously news to me, when I got home from vacation and received 2 appraisals at my house. And he and I had a nice conversation about, what the options were and what else was explored, rather than taking 7,100 square feet of land off my property. I think as a concerned resident, there's other means and other ways that we can address a bus turnaround if that's what we want to do, than, taking someone's property. Like I said, I own 44 Ledge Road. Along my driveway is Esther Drive, along with my aunt who's here tonight. And, we want to explore what other options that there are, because as the road currently stands right now, and if you're looking at this, where the road intersects, Yes, where the road intersects, there's actually a turnaround right there that, good timing on that. There's a turnaround right there that currently exists, which buses can come up and turn around.
Could you point where you're talking about?
Absolutely. So here's, the turnaround would be right here. So Ledge Road splits, the private way goes up this way, there's a private way that goes up this way. And here, there's a cul-de-sac right here, which, can you guys see that? Which obviously, wouldn't impede on anyone's property. I think the other thing right here too, right, is that, the width of the street for this turnaround, right now there's not enough room for 2 trucks, let alone a bus and a truck to come up the street. So I think we need to revisit the dimensions of the street if that's what you guys are wanting to do. When I asked Scott, part of my concern was, the trucks are currently stacking as is, right? They stack every day about 5 to 6 trucks per day at any given time down the street. And it comes as far down as 45, 44 Ledge Road, which would be over here, right? So my main concern is this bus turnaround is really not a bus turnaround. It's a pull-off for the trucks to continue to run their traffic. I think ultimately, I'm not opposed to having a bus come down my street at 44 Ledge Road and called Esther Drive. I have a cul-de-sac. My mother has driven buses she drove buses for over 20 years. And she used to, when we were small, come home for lunch and drive her bus down, turn around and, park it there while we went off, had lunch, and would go back to her day job of driving the bus, right? It fits. It would be a compromise.
I'm sorry, where?
It would be on Esther Drive, so over here. I don't think that it's on here, because this is just showing Oak Hill Road. So, right here. So come
Is the
down.
turnaround on the end of Esther Drive?
Is there a turnaround?
No, is the turnaround you're pointing to, is it on the end of Esther
There at
Drive or
this
at the beginning of
cul-de-sac?
Esther?
Right there at that cul-de-sac.
Is that a public road?
No, again, we can hear the concerns, we can have Public Works and the police chief respond to provide the
Okay.
information, rather than, unless you want to do it.
No, no,
that way.
no. that's
Okay,
fine.
but we can do it that
But,
way.
I mean, we're not opposed to that, right? I also think, from the appraisal that you guys had provided me, if we talk dollars and cents, you guys are vastly off. When you look at a comp at 20 Jonathan Way, and they are at .69 acres, the square footage on that is $9.23. You guys gave me, I want to say it was $4,000 to take 7,100 square feet of land. Do your math. It comes out to at least $68,000. That's what the cost would be in a given market and fair market value of today. That along, obviously, children are important, safety is important, but a bus turnaround isn't going to solve the safety concerns on Ledge Road. It's gonna put a Band-Aid on a burst artery, right? We want to talk about safety, then we need to put in sidewalks. We need other means than a bus turnaround to get the kids to be kids. That they can't drive their bikes up and down the street. They can't play ball in their yard. A ball goes out into the middle of the street and they can't go get it because there's trucks coming, right? Even on Saturday, 3:00 in the afternoon, I'm talking to Derek Perry across the street. Trucks are coming up and down on a Saturday at 3:00 in the afternoon, right? We have to move over so that they can get by. It's just a continuous, it's a continuous issue that safety, it goes beyond just this bus turnaround, and it goes beyond of, the taking, so to speak.
And I think we recognize that this was one aspect that we wanted to address, so
Okay. For me, I think, I obviously reject this. I think that the town needs to do a better job at addressing various options that are in play that can be used on the current footprint of today. I think that, that there's other things that need to be, if we're talking about safety in children, then we need to really talk about sidewalks and how that would fit into Ledge Road. I know that was brought up in a past meeting, and it came back as jurisdiction on Dunstable Road. Well, Ledge Road is all in Chelmsford.
and that's going to be part of the subject of the other
Okay.
meeting that I talked about. It's transportation, walking, driving.
Okay, so I think then if we need to talk about the root cause before we put the cart before the horse, right? I think, these are all things that are being brought up, but aren't solving the root cause of the issue. And until you address the root cause, no solution is going to actually be good, right? I think at the end of the day, there needs to be other options that we explore for the amount of kids that are on the street. There's about 6 kids that take the bus, right? So it's obviously a very big expense on the town in order to take this. So, for the amount, if we look at dollars and cents, we really need to think of it as, does it make sense? Because at the end of the day, I know all the residents, myself included, which I'm sure you'll probably hear from them this evening, but, we're not for this, right? There's other critical issues that need to be addressed than this, and there's other ways that we can do this bus turnaround if you ask for the neighbor's opinion, right? I'm sitting here volunteering my other land on a roadway that wouldn't have to take anyone's land at the end of the day.
Okay.
Questions?
So let me take off where you ended. Good evening.
Thank you.
My name's Lori Woods. I live on 4 Esther Drive, which is actually 44 Ledge Road. My husband and I built our home and had to give our address. We had to make up an address. Esther was my grandmother's name. It's in her pasture. I built my home. I've been there 30 years. I took the bus, my entire education, and got on the bus at the end of Ledge Road and Dunstable Road. And that's just what we did, so we just always called that the bus stop. Now we're changing it to the other side of Ledge Road on a corner that I have to talk about the trucks because this is the safety of that bus stop. We can see, talking about it amongst our neighbors, at 8 o'clock, 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, and then again in the afternoon, 2:30, 3, 3:30. As a bus tries to pull in and out of that turnaround, they're going to be cut off or get behind or have to wait for a large number of trucks loaded with the material from Newport Company. That is going to impact a lot of the getting the kids to and from. They might even be late because they're stuck there for maybe 10 minutes. And you know how buses are. It's like usually you're pretty much on time, 1 or 2 minutes. Discussing this with the neighbors, as my niece Melissa said, my driveway for Esther Drive is also the driveway for 44 Ledge. It's a long dirt driveway. When we built, we made the agreement with the town. The town gave us the approval to build as long as we kept that driveway cleared for emergency vehicles to get up there. The town of Chelmsford doesn't take care of it. I just bought my husband a new plow truck. Good girl. To keep that clear, to keep that road clear. If indeed it is a bus stop that you're looking for, and we all agree children's safety is of the utmost importance, the parents would be able to wait for the bus. At that turnaround, we have a barn, goats, a horse. Those livestock also use this field that you want to take away from my niece. That she worked very hard to be able to keep it in our family. It was my dad's land. And yes, it's a pasture, but it's a pasture for our wildlife, for our livestock. My granddaughter's taking riding lessons, would like to have that area so she can ride. So the goats and the horse can, do their grazing as they have been. You're taking that away from us without asking, hey, this is what we want to do. Do you have any other solutions? We have what we think is a good solution. Use our driveway. A bus can turn around there. I want that on record, and I would like it on record that my neighbors agree with me.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
And I'm not going to get into the truck thing. You'll hear when we have our next meeting about the truck thing. But I strongly feel if you take that field away from the horse and make it a bus turnaround, the buses are going to be stuck there waiting for it. It's on a corner where the trucks try to get going pretty quickly because they've come down the hill, off the dirt road, it's paved. They try to get going because they've got to get out to the highway. They got to get their dollars made. They got to get the heck off Ledge Road. It's not like, oh, we're going from point A to point B. They're getting out to Route 3. They gotta hammer down. That corner is where they pick up speed. Not a good place for a bus stop turnaround. I think if you're going to be offering to take people's property, there's probably another house on Ledge Road that you could just take their house, give them fair market value, and do the bus stop turnaround rate at their house, because at that corner, it's not safe. I don't know if any of you have been up there at 9 o'clock or 3 o'clock. Those are like some high points. That would be when a bus is trying to get where they're going. You're going to be stuck behind a lot of trucks. Now, we're talking about putting in lights. If we put in lights, we should put in sidewalks. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Any other speakers?
Who's wanting to leave?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Karen Spengler. I'm at 27 Ledge Road. And so I am fully supportive of my neighbors and do not want Melissa's land to be taken. I feel like my neighbors are being punished for Newport's profit. At the same time, I came tonight because, I'm going to get emotional, I have kids who have to walk up and down that street. And I agree that to some extent this is putting a Band-Aid on a hemorrhage, but I need a Band-Aid. My kids aren't safe, and I'm afraid they'll be hemorrhaging. on Ledge Road if something isn't done for this school year. I have a 12-year-old who has to walk home on her own. And the trucks have just gotten, I know we're not talking about truck traffic, but it has gotten worse and worse. And I'm terrified. So I appreciate your willingness to hear us, and I stand in support of my neighbors, and I think it's really generous for Melissa and Lori to offer Esther, and hope that you'll consider the other options so that we're not being punished for Newport's profit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Arlene Lauren. I live at 2 Oak Hill Road, North Chelmsford. I'm Melissa's mom. My thing is, I know a few months ago we had a meeting about them taking the end of Ledge Road to come in. How is the bus going to turn? They can only come in and out one way. Coming into Ledge Road. You're not going to be coming from Stonehill Road and taking a right, because you're not going to be able to make the corner. You know, and there are other ways. There are other ways to do something. You can get the small buses. I know one of my neighbors does have a small bus that goes up and picks up one of her children. They're in, one of the special educations, but the small bus would be so much better if the parents need them to be picked up. I just think that would be a better solution. All righty, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Val Pager, and I live at 38 Ledge Road with my wife, Terry. We've lived there 30 years. We're not related to Melissa. So what I want to say is this is very much about the children. We raised 5 children there. We have 13 grandchildren that can't come visit us because they can't play in the front yard. You're going to have the bus come down the road, and the problem has to be solved. I support all of what they've said.
Yep.
But you're only solving part of the problem. What do they do the rest of the day? They can't play. They can't be children. And think about what they've lost. My 5 children still today talk about, my children are the same age as Melissa, actually my daughter Carrie, they were best friends, mostly trouble, but they were best friends. And
Amen.
they talk today, and all of you probably think back today on the times that you walked down to the school bus. Now, the solution that you're proposing locks our children in the house, and you're going to take land away and expand the road in the process. I would suggest that we not talk about the trucks today. I got that. But we need to. We need to talk about our homes, our neighborhoods, and our children in a subsequent meeting. But for today, why bring in the pavers? Why bring in the trucks and take property, spend the town's money, to Melissa's point? Why not, as an interim solution, while we work out the real solution to the real root cause, have the bus come down the street and pick the kids up as from a safety perspective and do the turnaround on Esther Drive? And allow that as an interim solution while we all put our heads together and work through the situation that we face, which is we're kind of ignoring it, putting this Band-Aid on. The real situation is the one that we're not allowed to talk about tonight, okay? But that situation that we're not allowed to talk about tonight started at 4:35 this morning, 4:35. And by the way, I'm not making that up because I have a Ring doorbell, and it happens to be very close to the street. So I can send you video of every truck that comes down. That's the root cause, that's the problem we have to solve, and recognize that there's a business that has to be operated. So, but why not do something interim? Protect the children, but at the same time, don't do something permanent, and don't spend the town's money. And then work together to come up with a solution that works for everybody, including Newport.
Thank
That's all I
you.
have to say.
Thank you.
I just want to add one more thing.
Sure.
So Melissa Lauren, 4475 Ledge Road. I know that I had spoken to Virginia earlier about possibly looking at signage for the road to, allow traffic to be withheld from like 7 to 9 and 2 to 4 in the afternoon. Now, I know down at Varney Park that they have time that we can permit traffic. On Lynn Ave today, I drove by, there's a no truck sign, right? Like, what kind of signage can the town support to help reduce the traffic, but make it also safe for children during the hours of onboarding and offboarding the bus during the day, right? And listen, we know that they're not going to just go away, right? But if we can create other solutions or address other areas like signage that's going to stop them from 7 to 9 and 2 to 4, you're eliminating 4 hours of traffic a day. And I think from a resident standpoint, that's fair, right? A workday is 8 hours. That alleviates half the workday, right? So I failed to mention that when I was up here last time, but I do think it's something that we should consider as a path forward.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else in this room or in the Zoom room who would like to speak? Okay.
Hello. Derek Perry, 45 Ledge Road. I'm also opposed to taking the land from Melissa. I think it's, like everyone said, it's just putting a Band-Aid on it. There's got to be a better solution. It's not going to help anything. It's not going to... I have 2 kids that take the bus every day. Well, actually, one now. As a matter of fact, last week, my oldest just got her license. Truck coming down the road pushed her off the side of the road. She got 2 flat tires. Inexperienced driver, but that's what we go through on a daily basis. And I think by taking her land, like they said, you're punishing her, and it's just not fair. So I strongly oppose taking of the land and the bus turnaround. I think there's definitely a better solution.
Thank you. Okay, any other public comment? So Paul, I know we have some folks from DPW and Chief Spinney here, and we also have Paul Haverty.
Should we start with Steve Youngley, talk about the bus turnaround locations and Esther Drive, as well as the one in
Sure.
Steve?
Hi, good evening. Steve Youngley, Assistant DPW Director. Just to speak to the other locations, when this first come about and we were asked to develop a plan for the turnaround, we looked at a few different options. We looked at the town-owned parcel on Oak Hill Road up at the end. There's heavy wetland concerns with that location, so we took that off the list pretty quick. We considered Esther Drive at the beginning, but with it being a private road, we kind of put that to the side, and not being sure if the bus could even turn around at the end, because current days, if they're en route, they do not want to have to back up. So if it's the larger bus, we'd have to see if that would even be possible. We looked a little further up into the private property past the end of the public way, which is just past the Oak Hill Road. Didn't necessarily think any of that was a good option, so we kind of developed into the plan that you've all been looking at, which is sort of building the cul-de-sac, if you will, right at across from the Oak Hill Road location. So we did kind of vet out, at least quickly, a few other spots in the area with the intent of the bus coming up the street, stopping at each individual house, and then just using that turnaround to turn around and head back the other direction, not necessarily to make that cul-de-sac, if you will, the actual bus stop. So, you know, again, that's how we kind of narrowed in on that location anyway. So I don't know if that helps anything, but that's how we got to where we are.
Thank you, Steve.
Can I ask a question?
Is that all right? Maybe not. Yeah.
Do I need to go on my?
Yeah, he can't hear you otherwise.
Hi, Steve. Quick question. You just mentioned the private property up on the private way up that you guys decided not to move forward with. What was the reason that you decided not to move forward with it?
Well, again, looking at having to, if it's the large, you know, the regular sized bus, if it doesn't want to back up, they don't, the school department or the bus coordinator, whatever it was fairly specific, I believe, and they're not going to back up. So we needed to be able to, we looked at a couple different options, swinging up towards the quarry and coming in and around, seeing if the bus could be able to navigate in through some of the houses in there. And we just felt like the amount of property that we would need to take easement over to make that happen, and then to do work in there, because obviously they want it to be paved, they want it to be all this, that kind of pulled us away from that location, again, into the location we're into now.
And what is the objection on the backing up of the bus? Like, I see buses back up all the time, so why all of a sudden is Ledge Road just off reason for backing up? Is that a bus thing? Is that I'm not aware of that, so.
Yeah, I will, here comes Gary, because he's the one that actually spoke to the school department and the bus coordinator, so he can answer that question. I'm shooting secondhand information.
Thank you. Good evening. Gary Persichetti, DPW Director. Yes, I did meet with the school department and with the gentleman in charge of the buses, and they said that they do not prefer to back up and usually will not back up buses on major roads if at all possible. It's too much of an issue for a potential accident, especially having kids on board. I know I've heard it is done a little bit on some very small roads that are within neighborhoods that, you know, would not potentially have any kind of flow of vehicles, like, you know, Ledge Road, you know, major roads like Main Street, Route 4, any of those. So that was part of the determination when talking to them, but they had no issues at all of stopping at individual homes on the way up and down and picking up children.
So a couple questions for you, Gary. One, you say major roads. Well, Ledge Road is a highly residential area. It's not a major road. It's a, you know, you can't fit a car and a truck on there. So the definition of Ledge Road being a major road, I think, needs to be put in a different context. And
sure.
I mean, I think you're familiar with the area, so I think your interpretation of it, just as well as all of us that live there, you know, we deal with it every day. Like, so I wouldn't characterize it as a major road by any means. And then I think, secondly, who specifically at the bus company is in charge of this? Is it planning? Like, what department?
Now, the school department has a person that's in charge of that.
Okay. And who's that person?
He does all the bus routes, sets them all up. Actually, I do not have that name in front of me. I will try to look it up as we continue to talk.
Okay.
I want to give the board a chance to also ask questions.
Okay.
When you're done.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one more
So, Gary,
Oh, no, there's.
has there been any, in the discussions, one of the comments that came up was a smaller bus on the road? Were you party to anything relative to possibly using a smaller bus that could maneuver
No,
better?
I am not, I'm not privy to any smaller bus. When I went to the school department, I went there to find out if they would, as we said, come up the road if there was a turnaround that was made for them. We did not get into discussions of sizes of buses. I don't want to speak for someone that's not here or a department that's not
I
here.
understand.
And I'm not sure how those decisions are made, because I don't know how many other children that particular bus would be picking up besides Ledge Road.
Are there any questions from the board for DPW?
I'm just wondering, one of the comments, and I forget if it was you or Steve that made it, that the bus doesn't like to back up with kids on it. Is there a way that the bus could go up and turn around, then pick up the kids on the way out, and then in the afternoon, drop them off on the way in and do the turnaround once the bus is empty?
I would believe that there's probably people on both sides of the road, so you're gonna have people crossing over if nothing else then.
You don't know where else the bus is going either.
Yeah,
that's
be in
true.
the middle of the stops, you know.
Gary, Steve, I can't remember if it was you or Steve mentioned that when you looked at Esther, there was a question about whether it was turnable, whether you had the circumference. Is that a question you got an answer to, or is that just a question?
No, I think it's more like a question we would have to look into further. Go out, do a little additional survey down in there to get the width of the road to see, and then we could put the bus temple on it to see if it could possibly turn around in there. And if it could, if we had to enlarge it or whatever, that's something we can consider further if that's what people want to do. But again, with it being a private way, we kind of looked at it just quickly, again, private way, and just kind of moved on to the next one. Because again, private way, we would have no rights to drive down there, so we would have to take easement over the whole thing to allow the bus to go down there. And then it becomes a question of, do we have to run a sander down there for safety of the bus? We have to plow it, to make sure the bus can get in, the snowbank's pushed wide enough so the bus can turn around. So, it sort of spawns a whole other list of questions.
Ma'am, did you have a comment?
So, yes, Lori Woods at 4 Esther Drive. So this is what I'm addressing, what we're talking about right now. So that, I believe there's enough room for a bus turnaround. We do a lot of activity in that area. It's in front of the barn. It is all dirt. That driveway where 44 comes in 44 Ledge, Forester Drive, same driveway. If you feel that going all the way up that dirt road, our dirt driveway, and turning around where the barn is, and my driveway that goes off to my house is in that area, so it's a connecting area. The end of 44 and 4 Esther Drive, where our mailboxes are, where we put our trash out, I think would be a better bus turnaround if you're going to take the land and build and put in the hot top turnaround, and then your plows could take care of it, would make a little more sense than the horse's pasture at 75 Ledge on that big curve. So I'd like to put that out on the table, that we're talking about bus stop turnarounds. We're talking about children's safety. If the town feels that going up our private driveway, even though we've given you permission, yes, we'd have to talk about the plowing and the sanding. And I'd like to put out on the table, look into taking that same dimension and doing it at the end of 44 and 4 Esther Drive, up on Ledge Road. For safety reasons and for, the bus wouldn't have to back up. I'm sure the bus wouldn't have to back up if they came all the way up my driveway where the barn is. If the bus driver knew how to drive, they would be able to do a circle without backing up.
Thank you.
That's all I had to say.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The one nice thing about that offer is I could see that if you were to do the original plan taking, you might get trucks pulling in and idling their meeting versus up that driveway.
We could have Chief Spinney speak to how you could sign that.
Yeah.
Are you ready for that? Or?
Sure, if you'd like, yeah. Or do you want to hear the?
Okay, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Erlene Lauren. I live at 2 Oak Hill Road. I just want to bring to your attention that before all this happened, and we all got our letters, I know Mr. Persichetti from private, working with him for years. And because my daughter would not call them, he would call myself or my husband to have her call them. I just think that's very inconsiderate and unprofessional.
Okay, thank you.
That's just how I feel. And also I feel, well, this isn't the truck thing, so, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you want to have Chief Spinney?
Yeah. Chief Spinney, do you want to, I think if you could comment on two things. One is about possible signage or restrictions on trucks at the bus turnaround, and also this idea that we could restrict hours of traffic on Ledge Road, like we do on other roads in the community.
Okay, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can't see you, but
I'm having some bandwidth problems, so
Okay.
I apologize. I don't want to risk video at this time.
Chelmsford Telemedia, is it possible to turn the, excuse me, Chief? Can you, Chief?
Yes.
Hang on a second. Chelmsford Telemedia, is it possible to turn the volume up a little on the Zoom room? Everybody seems a little bit distant. Go ahead, Chief.
Okay, good evening.
Better.
As far as restrictions go, my only concern would be if there was an exclusion for a particular kind of vehicle during a particular time of day, there's no alternative path. So you technically be trapping vehicles inside and on the other side with no viable way to proceed. I'll be honest, I have not considered that option. We certainly could look into it. I've never encountered that scenario where there's no alternate route during the time of closure. So that being the case, that could be a problem.
Okay. So we can look into that further then. That takes more. Go ahead, Chief. Sorry.
Just to let all the residents aware, I'm sure they've seen the police activity up there. I'm directing all the resources we have available, especially during the early morning hours. While I'm sure everyone can understand that volume poses a difficult situation for the police officers because we have no authority over volume of vehicles. The officers are obviously there to maintain safety with regards to truck speeds, overloading, and other types of moving violations. I can tell you from reviewing the officers' reports over the last couple of weeks, they have been seeing averaging 30 trucks per hour, starting right around 6 o'clock. The officer over the last week or so has been getting there between 6 and 6:30, staying there till about 7:30. And then when the day shift comes on duty, we're deploying the traffic officer at least several times throughout the day, again, just to monitor more than anything. I don't think, the trucks obviously know that the officers are there. So if that keeps speeds even lower, that's a good thing. I can tell you that when we did deploy the speed indicator equipment without an officer present, we were not getting many violations. The trucks, although they are loud, they're dirty, they're large, we're not seeing, or speed violations were not being recorded at any real consistent level. I did have an officer out there for the better part of today. I think out of the 28 trucks that passed him, one was traveling 25 miles an hour, and the officer did stop that truck. And he spoke with that operator. but speeding has been very few and far between, at least as far as the officers' observations are concerned.
Are you?
We're going to continue to we're going to continue to direct resources in that area. Last year, we had the state police come up with the truck team. Certainly open to doing that again. So we're going to maintain increased presence for the foreseeable future. Thank you.
Okay. And I know we'll talk about that more when we start talking the traffic. Does the board have any other questions for Chief or the DPW? Paul Haverty, I know that you're sitting there. Do you have any input for us with respect to some of these options?
Good evening, Madam Chair. Paul Haverty, Town Council. I really don't have any input with regards to these options. These are more policy questions than they are legal questions. I'm happy to answer any question board members may have with regards to the potential taking.
What would have to be in place in order to use a private road?
Right. We would have to have an easement.
I can't.
It would require an easement, and that would require going to town meeting to actually get the town meeting to accept that easement. So there would be a bit of a process involved.
Okay.
Who owns the road now?
I presume one of the previous speakers who had indicated that it was a private roadway.
They couldn't just grant it.
They could just grant it. They certainly have no restrictions on in what they could grant, but as the town, we have to go through the proper process to accept an easement. Because the town would be acquiring an interest in land.
Any other questions?
Not for Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Any thoughts on path forward?
I have a question.
Sure.
Just about using this Esther Drive. So if they turned around in Esther Drive, does that change anything for children that might be in the homes further down, that they'll have to walk down to there? Is that how that will work? In other words, does it change where they'd get picked up and so forth?
It would, because right now, where the kids go is at the end of Ledge Road, right? So they
Right.
would be taking a good half mile off their walk, quarter mile, whatever the distance is. But I can tell you that Oak Hill Road, they can cut across the yard, like the kids walk across the yard all the time,
Yeah.
right? Like, I have no problem with that. They come down, they feed my horse, they feed my goats, like, I don't know who's in my backyard half the time anyways, right? So, but I think there's 6 houses up further.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the map and
Yeah,
kinda-
so I live at 75. I don't have any children. The woman that, Shirley Banowski, she doesn't have any children. Everyone on the opposite side, I think there's one young boy
Yeah.
that goes to Chelmsford schools. And does he get it? Does Ryan?
I mean, just imagining those homes did have children.
Yeah.
Does this would the Esther Drive turnaround pose a problem for any of those homes?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mark, maybe that's a better question for DPW or the schools than
Yeah.
the residents who live there.
I think the residents live there, they'd kind of have an idea about walking and
But-
so forth.
But,
Yeah.
but not forever. I mean,
I'm more interested in that, actually.
Yeah, but right
Yeah,
now you
because if
have,
you look at the map, see where Oak Hill Road comes out, I don't know, can you pull it up on this screen? And I can.
They can't. the way
Okay,
it's-
so if you look right behind Ken's head, right, there's like a L shape. That's all grass in like yard. So my property there is about 2 acres, and my house is set back, right? So they could they could walk across the yard, it's not that big of a deal.
Where are they all being picked up now?
Way at the end of, at the intersection of
Dunstable Road.
Dunstable and.
Way down there?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, Mark, if anything,
So they're all walking all the
that
way
means you
down
have a
there? Okay.
long road and they're all going here.
I'm
Now
used
you
to
can put
seeing
a
the
pickup here.
buses, yeah.
So you're
No, that's fine.
cutting the
I'm used to
traffic
seeing the
off.
buses stopping everywhere along the way,
Yeah.
picking up
Well,
kids
and
as
that
opposed
was
to have
that was the
a
intent.
real bus stop.
That was the intent.
Yeah, exactly.
But how you're looking at that bus turnaround now, so even the houses up past,
Yeah, okay.
it would be the same impact if it was that bus turnaround or Esther Drive.
Okay.
Did you say, ma'am, that you were gonna donate some land at 44 in place of this? Is that, I mean,
I said nothing about a donation.
She said
maybe an easement.
take the easement there
Oh.
instead.
I'm the businessman, I don't talk
no,
about
I
any sort of
understand that. I just didn't, I wanted to make sure.
Yeah. No, and like what Lori was saying is like, she's basically saying that Esther Drive, at the top of Esther Drive, we wouldn't mind giving a parcel there, but the reality of a bus turning around there, you're gonna have to take way more than 7,100 square feet off of there, because the bus is gonna come up, and then they're gonna have to bear right, instead of bearing right into bear left into a driveway, now they're gonna have to bear left to do that bus turnaround to go back out.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Thoughts?
I mean, maybe there's some other options to consider, but I think they really have to be considered,
Quickly.
carefully. I mean, even if somebody grants a temporary easement, what's going to happen if other people move in there, and even if somebody allows kids to go across their property, again, what happens when there's new owners? I think that has to be considered.
Any other thoughts?
Hi, Earlene Lauren again.
Ma'am.
You're talking about like the way the kids wouldn't have to be picked up at the cul-de-sac. If the bus was going to turn around there, why can't they pick them up at their houses on the way up or down?
Thank you.
I think we were just talking about the ones past Esterbrook.
Well, there's only a couple of them, but, that's what people are doing now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead. What were you saying?
Yeah, that's exactly where I was heading. And as what Pat mentioned, is I'm not just interested in the fact that there's no kids up the hill right now, but downstream, there may be kids there may be other people that own property to cut through and all that. We're looking for a solution that'll hopefully work for the,
Long term.
at least midterm, yeah.
Right, at least
Yeah,
midterm, right.
Right.
Walk it.
What, George?
I'd like to walk it. I'd like to go up and see it. I mean,
Okay.
Wish you guys would. We'd invite you, we'll get you
I've
lunch.
been, but I haven't looked at it from that, I was looking at it from the subject
Could
that we're
we-
not supposed to talk about.
Could we please do the discussion here? Thank you.
I mean, just sit up there for an hour.
Ma'am, we need to, thank you.
That's okay.
Do we want to have DPW look at these other couple of options that were
I
proposed?
think, I think before you make any decision, you have to look at all of them.
Okay.
I mean, you realize that means we're not going to have a turnaround by when school opens.
Mhm.
Probably not till spring.
If we need to change where we're going with it, it'll be
If,
spring.
I'm going to ask the people in the audience to stop the rumble because your voices are carrying here and it's very distracting. Thank you. So, if, for example, Esther Drive were an alternative, you would have to get approval at, if we even have time, we'd have to get approval at fall town meeting or a special town meeting in order to implement that during the school year.
And if it involves any construction, you're not going to do that till
Right.
you're out of the winter into the spring, so you're probably talking April, May.
Right. Did we look at the other side of the road there with 44 and 4? We never, that wasn't,
I mean, Steve can address that about the ability at.
Gary and Steve, was the alternative to put the turnaround near 44 and 4 Esther, was that in your previous thinking?
It was not, right at the corner of Esther and Ledge Road. That spot was, honestly, probably the one spot we did not consider.
they're talking about the back end though, right? They're talking about the back end.
So the impression I get is basically just flipping the cul-de-sac and sliding it back towards the corner of Esther Drive, I think was the discussion I heard earlier. So we can certainly evaluate that tomorrow.
That's going to require a different town meeting vote, too.
Yep.
How have they been turning around?
They don't.
They don't
They
get
don't.
out
Go down
there.
Pick up at the end of
They
Ledge.
just
Pick up
go
at the
off-
end
Just
and-
go to the
The
end.
problem is you
That's it.
have, you have all these kids walking
That they're all. Yep,
along this
gotcha.
road to get to the bus stop, back and forth each day, some of them without adults.
Yeah, with trucks.
Is there anything, Paul, that could be done during the school year or the first part of the school year? You know how like they put crossing guards out? Is there anything that could be done to put some kind of, it wouldn't be a crossing guard, but some kind of presence on Ledge Road as the kids walk out to Dunstable? That, a similar type of adult?
I mean, an escort down to the, from the, but
Just that.
how would you time that?
What if you just did a, what if you
Different
even just took a signboard that said, "Attention truck drivers, bus pickup is from 8 to 9," or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Please be aware of children walking on the road, and then same thing in the afternoon, just something to make them
I mean, we could do
go
that
through there much slower.
and increase the police presence during those hours.
Yeah, you could put a signboard out there. That's,
Until we get this
Could you
figured out.
reduce the speed limit during those hours? Even if you can't stop them?
Well, they said they're not going over 25 miles an hour.
Could you make it 15?
I don't think
During
we're
those
allowed to
hours.
Do that, are we?
I don't believe we have the authority to do that without state approval. I don't.
Well, I know, but like Chief Spinney said, you can't limit them completely from being able to go down there, so I'm wondering if you could do something in the middle, reduce their speed further during
Yeah.
those hours.
Jim,
Just a thought.
yeah, Jim Megarian, the state, we require state approval for speed limits. Could you put one of those yellow advisory signs for speed limit on the road, or what's your thought on that? Jim, I guess, Chief Spinney, in terms of, I know that.
Yeah, the yellow advisory signs are strictly that. They would not require any type of select board approval. I can also make a best effort to have an officer in that area at those times. Can I guarantee there'll always be one? No, but I would say the vast majority of the time, I could have an officer right at that stop when needed.
So let me ask this to the neighborhood. To look at an alternative, factually, it's not going to be able to be closed by early in the school year, just simply because of the processes we have to go through, whether it's use of Esther Drive or whether it's putting a turnaround in a different place. So if we were to try to increase presence and put signage up to, ask them to be cautious during school hours, does that help alleviate some of your concerns? Is that the preferred approach from the neighborhood standpoint versus moving forward with this current turnaround? I know you were looking for a Band-Aid now, but the best Band-Aid, it sounds like we can do, is possible signage and increased police presence during school bus hours.
Hi, Derek Perry, 45 Ledge. I know in the morning, most of the parents, we drive our kids down to the bus stop because you can't have them walk in the street. The assistant town manager, I've sent him probably 200 pictures of kids at the bus stop and parents at the end of the road. We'd have, 5 cars parked on the side of the road. You'd have 4 trucks, 5 trucks trying to get off Ledge. But having the police here, I think that would be great. And the Chelmsford police have been fantastic. They're constantly out there, and they're doing a great job, and I think the chief is doing a great job. But, I'm all for right now, I think that would be a good idea. I think that would be a
I know
good
you
idea.
can't speak for everyone. Your preference would be to hold off on this
Hold off on
particular
that and-
turnaround, maybe try to do some signage and increase presence
Have some
during
signage.
school bus hours.
Increased, I would go for that. Like I said, a lot of the parents, and mostly in the afternoon, I see more kids will walk home. But in the morning, all us parents are out there at the bus stop driving them at the end of the road because you can't let them walk in the morning or at night. It's just not safe. With 30 trucks coming down an hour, it's just not safe for
Okay.
the kids.
Thank
I think
you.
that would be a great idea. And thank you to the chief.
Thank you.
I'll speak to this also.
Can you
since
just
I-
do your name and address?
Oh, I'm sorry. Karen Spengler, 27 Ledge Road.
Thank you.
Since I mentioned that I have a child that will be walking. Yes, I mean, I think especially because the turnaround as it is proposed really isn't safe either for the bus. And I think we're all afraid the trucks will use it as a idling spot
Okay.
anyway. But really, if we could have a police officer there for morning and afternoon, that would make a huge difference. The things we've seen there, trucks trying to cut the buses off, and, I mean, disregarding the stop sign, you know, when the bus puts its stop sign out. So I think having a police officer there would be imperative.
Okay.
And the buses start coming at 6:45 for the high school and running through 9 a.m., so it's a big commitment, but it would, and then what time, they're coming home from 2 to 4, so, thank you.
Thank you. Paul, your thoughts, is that something we can go look at?
Yeah, we'll obviously, we'll follow this up, with the Traffic Safety Committee, which are all the
And
people
look
that
at the
were
two
part of it.
alternatives and,
Hello, Earlene Lauren, 2 Oak Hill Road again. My problem is, these trucks are using Chelmsford roads. Everything's in Westford. They're all in Westford.
we know, and we can't address that part tonight, but we're gonna have, that's part of the discussion for the traffic session. Right, there's nowhere else we can send them right now. We don't have any authority to send them somewhere else. Let me just say
Okay.
that.
I just feel as though Newport is so big that I feel as though this has been going on for a while and somebody's getting their pockets lined some way.
Thank you. Okay, so
I just want to add,
Listen,
only for the bus turnaround.
for the bus turnaround. For the bus turnaround, I think the way, if you were to wait there and see how the kids get on and off the bus at Dunstable and Ledge comes in at an angle. So anybody leaving Ledge, taking a right, is, is easier. But if they're taking a left, the trucks actually have to back up again into Ledge to do that left. I think we should talk about signage, and it's for the safety of the children, that they don't take that left. That's where the bus stops, and a lot of times that's where the backup is. When the bus is there, we have some that want to take a right into Ledge, and they have to swing way on to the other people's property to take that turn. So and I understand that, you tried to take some of that land for that reason at what we call the bus stop. So signage there at the bus stop is very important.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Okay. So let me did you want to say something? Okay, I'm just going to try to summarize where I think we are. We can look into the feasibility of an Esther turnaround, short, mid, or long-term, of 44 and 4 Esther. We can look at signage on Ledge Road and at the bus stop itself. Increase police presence during morning and afternoon bus hours. And we'll be looking at this in the bigger picture of transportation infrastructure in our future planned meetings. Did I get everything? And we will not move forward with the proposed easement
As of now.
as of now, mainly because the residents say they don't want it.
We're going to study some alternatives.
Yes, I mentioned the alternatives. Paul, George mentioned maybe going up there at some point. I don't know if that's something that needs to be coordinated with Steve, or you work that with the neighbors directly.
Can I just make one comment to that, though?
Yes.
I mean, I know that at least, I want to say almost all of us have been up there and sat. I know I've sat for a couple hours in my car on a few occasions.
I've driven up there. I haven't sat.
I've driven all the way into the gravel pits. I've turned around, I've come back, I've sat on the side of the road. I know, I see what you're going through. I've done it in the morning, I've done it in the afternoon. Believe me, and speaking for other board members, we get what you're going through. So the assumption that we haven't been up there, we've seen it, we're aware.
So I'm going to assume that Melissa or any of the people who spoke tonight would be a fine point of contact if the board members wanted to just coordinate sitting in your yard for a while. Okay.
Yeah, I actually,
So
can I ask the chief a question?
very quickly, because we've got a long agenda ahead of us.
So, Chief Spinney.
Does it have to do with the bus turnaround? Because if it doesn't, I'm going to say no.
It does.
All right.
It has, so, there was a cop at the end of my driveway last week, and I asked him if he wants to pull down the driveway so that he can monitor it better. And he said that he can't do it due to radar. I don't know if that's like, I don't mind if they sit in my driveway, is what I'm trying to say.
So Chief, I think the comment is when they see the police cars, they all radio each other. If you wanted to do some more stealthy, please, in the audience, it carries, okay? I need you guys to not interrupt. If you wanted to do something that was a little more stealthy to see what's going on, they're offering use of their driveways.
Mhm.
So I'll let him work that with you directly.
Okay.
Thank you.
I got that, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, thanks for coming, and I'm sure we'll hear you again at the next meeting.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Paul, reports and presentations?
Sure, I'll turn it over to Steve Yonley for the monthly Traffic Safety Committee report. You have a
computer's falling
handout in your
asleep.
packet. It's a rather brief one for the month of August.
Hi, good evening again. I'll just touch on these real brief. The committee met specifically with the proponents of the West Campus project a couple weeks ago. Had a pretty good discussion, lengthy discussion on some of the impacts of the project. Mainly it's all on state road, but we carry the discussion further into some of the local initiatives in the area. And then also a project that's just starting to get off the ground there. I know we've spoken to the board before about the traffic signal at the end of Richardson Road, and then coordination in with the Princeton Street and North Road signal. So we had some discussion on impacts into that project, and it seems like we're going to sort of work collaboratively on that. I believe Evan Belansky in Community Development was drafting a response letter, so we can continue those discussions with the West Campus folks. I think as part of some of the other outreach that the West Campus folks had done, I think Chief Spinney had gotten the traffic counters out on Princeton Street. I know the West Campus folks had done a few different meetings with like the Windermere neighborhood and the Augusta Way neighborhood, and then kind of the college streets on the other side of Princeton. So I think the driver out of some of those discussions, Chief being proactive, getting the counters out there to gather some information. And then just lastly, there's kind of some standard stuff that we do every year around this time. We're going to be highlighting all the stops, crosswalks, school zones around all the schools prior to school starts. We'll be getting the parking signs up in the center now that National Grid has completed they were replacing a bunch of poles, so in an effort to stay out of their way and not to lose the brand new signs, let them do their work, so we'll get those up shortly. And then we got a big delivery of signs a week or so ago. That was some signs I think we discussed the last update, or for some kind of traffic control around the South Road School. Stop sign over Grant Washington was installed last week, and then we've been just actively replacing some other signs. So that's pretty much the update for things from the last month. So any questions or anything like that, I'll be happy to answer.
And that includes the speed limit signs, the flashing speed limit signs?
Yep. So I worked with Lieutenant Spence. I got a couple different options. We looked at something a little different than what we have around town. We ordered those a couple weeks ago. both the radar signs and then also a speed limit sign that's similar to the stop signs that we installed over at school in Graniteville. So it's the stop sign that has the white LEDs around the edge that'll blink at you as well. So we were able to fit in a set of those along with the radar signs. So they were about a 6 to 8 week lead time. So when they arrive, we'll get those up.
Okay.
I have a quick question for Steve. Steve, someone asked me about the wayfaring signs for North Chelmsford. Where are we with that process?
The wayfinding signs?
Yeah.
I had walked with Joe Tierney and his name escapes me, the kid that runs the Zesties. Maybe 6 weeks ago or so. We walked up and down through the square, looked at options. You know, I talked about the signs and some of the issues we had with the ones in the center. You know, it was a healthy discussion. It was 2 hours of wandering around the square. I had printed them a bunch of maps, and I think at this point, just on our end anyway, DPW was just kind of waiting for some kind of decision on where they wanted to put them and what they were going to order.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else for Steve on that? Okay, the next agenda item is the goals.
Bid award.
I'm sorry, did I miss one?
No, goals is next.
Goals is next, number 9.
George is trying to skip over.
All right, so what I thought, what I did in this document was try to summarize the discussions around the flip charts from our work session. Did I go out of order?
I don't know, I have 9 I have for town manager bid awards, and 10 I have for,
Oh, no, so you have an old agenda in
Okay.
front of you, I think.
Updated ones.
okay, thank you.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is just go through each one, and the numbers are not necessarily priority, I just put it there for reference. I want to just make sure that the goal is stated as we want it, the assignment and how measured, and then we need to put a by when on the end of it. Okay? So the first one is sewer capacity. Any comments on the content that is there?
I think it's pretty
It's-
accurate.
Most of it's lifted from the carryover, okay. And so what do we want to do in terms of the timeline here, Paul? Is there a target date before June?
We're the word I received today was the report's expected to be delivered on September 9th.
Okay,
So as soon as we receive the report, we'll get it out to you. In terms of where it goes from there, I think will depend on what's in the report and how we wish to proceed.
so we'll say at least the initial report by September? Everyone's okay with that, then we'll decide milestones from there?
Yeah.
Okay, the lessons learned. I think I took most of this from what it was in the previous document, and we had comments during our session and in the previous document that were a little buried about looking at, like, how does this apply to other utilities as well, so I just brought that out. And I know, I wasn't sure if we wanted to leave that as town manager. I know, Mark, you said you would offer to help with that process as well.
Sure.
So either way, I can put that in as a joint if people think it should be that, or
Oh, I thought you just put an MC there.
I can put an MC.
No, I'm
Yeah,
Select board is fine.
if I start getting salary and these guys start reporting to me, yeah, we can do that.
Okay, so,
But until that happens, no.
SB.
all right.
Again,
So considering everything else that we've got on our plate that's in here, when do we think is a reasonable time frame to shoot for?
I look to you, if we're more familiar with this root analysis process, what do you think, Virginia and Mark, in terms of a time frame that's reasonable to to.
I'd say by the end of the year.
End of the calendar year? Okay.
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 How much of that's gonna depend on reports out of Lowell and stuff like that?
It shouldn't.
Yeah, this is just
No, not
looking
for- not for this
backwards,
one,
what
no.
happened, and then
Okay,
how do
sure.
we apply it going forward? Okay, the Warren Pole Farm, I put the measurements in there as the conservation restriction is done, and we have a sustainable plan for municipal uses. That was pretty much carried over.
Well,
Made it more succinct.
As Paul can attest, town council, with the restriction has been sent to the land trust. We're awaiting, the commission is waiting the response from the land trust. And then it's going to go through a legal phase, and then it goes through the state. The safe thing is probably the end of the fiscal year, but I think everyone wants to get it done as soon as possible. But I think from past experience, trying to get action out of the state is like a black hole.
Well, let's
But-
talk about the part we can control.
Right, the part that we can control, it should be wrapped up by the end of this calendar year, clearly. I mean, it's, like I said, we're now on the cusp of Labor Day. Hopefully, we'll hear back from the land trust soon, and then it'll be resolving, which shouldn't be major issues. It really is, from what I understand, and then sending it, for review. So again, I would think we could get it out to the state surely within the next couple of months, if all goes well. And then from then, it may take some time to get a review and response from the state, depending upon how backlogged they are.
So you're saying by the end of December, we'd be ready to submit it to the state?
Oh, yeah, I would, yeah, if not, we've got some real concerns, and I think we
And
would.
is that, so that's for the conservation restriction? What about the other part that was brought up before about, like, the overall plan, sustainable plan?
I think
Is that all part of it?
I think it all falls from that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, the next one was the fire stations. Looking at kicking off that committee that we discussed when the initial criterion report was done, and also kind of laying out for each engine what needs to be done to make it operational and compliant with current standards. Is there some kind of incremental thing that needs to be done, or is it demolish and rebuild for all of them? So, anybody have any comments on what I typed up there?
Is there gonna be something, like, when we determine if we're gonna stay with the stations the way where they are at?
Right.
Before we do that, or
Right.
do we have to do that study first?
Right, so again, if you're involving appointing a committee, let's say you announce the committee in September, you get the committee established beginning of October, by the time they do their work, you're really talking spring, because it's gonna take some time to gather data and have discussions. It's probably one that
It's going to take the year.
it's gonna take the year, yeah.
Okay. So I'll just say June. Is everyone okay with how I did the measurements for PFAS for number 5? So the response, the immediate response action plan,
We've got the deadline.
Deadline's in October.
The deadline in October, exactly.
is there any update on when we might see something
Your
there?
next meeting, you'll be here at your next meeting.
So we'll look at the plan and then decide what the milestones are from there. So I have October on that one. ARPA funds, number 6. Should be advancing this.
How much of the ARPA have we received? Half?
Yeah,
And when do you think the other half's coming?
a year.
So I would think you'd want the process established very quickly, because he's sitting on half of it, and you don't want it to trickle out. And
So what's reasonable for us to work on a process? It's probably going to take an iteration or two.
I'd say you probably want it done you certainly want it done before Thanksgiving. My concern is you may, you got the town meeting that's going to warrant some attention. Again, you're going to sign a warrant in 3 weeks when you next meet. You'll then have consideration of articles for fall town meeting, then the fall town meeting.
Should I just say by December 1st?
Yeah, I'd say
or-
by December 1st, yeah, Thanksgiving, December 1st, yeah.
Okay.
In the meantime, that money just sits, nothing's going out on that.
Right, well, other than what you approved for Susan Gates, and my thought would be to have her come in next month and give a status report.
Mhm.
And Virginia and I discussed that.
Okay, number 7's the COVID recurrence preparation. Is everybody okay with what I wrote there? I think maybe that's just kind of a report at
Yeah, I
one
think
of
it's
our meetings,
ongoing, yeah.
Paul.
I think it's, yeah,
But
undefined.
like, here's kind of the baseline, right, and then depending what happens.
And it's sort of, I mean, it's sort of related to what you just mentioned about the COVID, ARPA monies. I mean, with school opening, you know, that level of response for the HVAC things, like we had in the spring, will be repeated. And that's sort of one of those, and then we'll monitor what happens. Yeah, so, but I think, no one seems to know where we're going.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's an ongoing.
Well, it's ongoing, but I think this was, I think you brought this one up, Mark. This was, can we write down what are the critical, you know, if there's all of a sudden another recurrence?
Right.
You've lived through this once.
Right.
So can you write down, like, what are the critical things that would have to be addressed?
Yeah, I mean, it's.
Is that, am I articulating that correctly?
Yeah, it's just a plan.
Just a plan.
We could probably report quarterly, I would say, you know, that'd probably be a good thing in terms of what's happened, where we're at with COVID. Or in terms of, but you're right, if there's an immediate thing, then we're going to immediately act.
How do you want the
It
plan to
was-
look? Like,
it
if the
was-
state went to full shutdown, if there were restrictions,
Right.
like, what type of plan do you want laid out?
This
gonna
was,
depend on
it was
what-
prep, not like status, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it wasn't really that.
It's like a preparedness plan, not
Is
a,
that, are we, you know, because obviously we're starting to get back into another somewhat of a
Right.
surge, if you will. You know, the question really is what are we going to do this quarter? What are we going to do in September and October? It's probably the times that I was thinking more about when I said that.
Yeah, we can probably have a report, I would put October on the report, because we're sort of already there with the schools, and then we're waiting feedback and reports on this building, the library, and so forth. So we can say October. Yeah.
Are we on the same page of what we're
Not
doing
sure.
here?
I don't think so.
I think there's a disconnect. So this was about if there's a recurrence,
Mhm.
can we have something that says, like, what's our preparedness plan
sort of like a,
before it happens?
Like a
Like, what are the
playbook.
critical things are we going to address? And I think what you're talking about is status reports on things that have happened.
Or are going to happen. Like, the big thing basically is air exchange. That's our big focus. I mean, right now, it all.
Whether or not there's a recurrence.
Whether or not there's a recurrence. We're looking at, because right now, as you know, the McKay Library's not open. The library trustees have expressed an interest on can we reopen that. We're working with engineers to examine the McKay Library. There were people in this building last week performing analysis on how we can institute proper air exchange in this 100-year-old building. So those are ongoing regardless of the pandemic. If situations arise from the pandemic, for example, if there's a mask mandate, I mean, we'll immediately wear masks. We have all the PPE installed. We never dismantled from last year in terms of response, in terms of PPE, the markings and so forth, if it goes. Obviously, we're working with the Board of Health in terms of what about vaccine booster clinics and those sort of things. Those are all planning in the works right now. But I guess.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was kind of thinking about back when we first discussed it.
Yeah.
Because I know you're kind of stuck with the buildings the way they are until you get the assessment completed,
Right.
until you get the ARPA money, and then you figure out where you can use it.
So where did we land on this? The first. Did you say October?
I think October, yeah.
Yeah.
I think October is realistic.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. The resident communications. I think this is going to take a little bit of time.
And I think we're going to be very busy in September and October, quite frankly.
I mean, is this a thing for the year? Is this like a June?
It's probably something that's going to
We
be
hit
built
it, we hit
past
it
there.
periodically,
Probably gonna be
kick off the
incremental.
discussions, figure out where we're going and hit it periodically.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Number 9 is the minutes. There were 2 pieces to this. One was the select board process, and then the other was just to get a minutes policy in place, working with town council, that we can roll out and to make sure our boards and committees are aware and compliant with the minutes.
I don't know that we need a policy, because the policy from the state level, from Attorney General's office, is pretty clear. So I don't know that I think we need to enforce it. I think we need to encourage boards and committees that they need to follow it.
Since I don't know what this looks like, or we don't know, could we say a minutes policy and/or guidance, depending what that looks like? Because we haven't written it yet.
I think we need it. Other towns have it. They've adopted it from the Attorney General's website.
But then if that changes, then you have to change your policy. Just
Yep.
refer to the Attorney General. I mean, and everybody gets the open meeting law.
Well, right now, we have significant non-compliance.
I understand.
Okay, so we're trying to,
And you think if we have a policy that's going to change?
well, if you have a policy that's in front of them and they sign off on it, that they understand it. If there's a chair for a particular committee or a board, they should have to actually review it and sign off that they're going to comply with that. That's my opinion. You can't continue to go on the way we have been. But
Well, I think it goes deeper than that, too. I mean, I think there's, members of committees and even chairs of committees that need guidance more than just in minutes, in, how to run a meeting and how to post a meeting and who needs to be at meetings and things like that. So I think it goes, I don't know if you want to concentrate just on minutes in this goal, but.
This goal was just about minutes.
Yeah.
So there's the process that we're going to do for the select board, which includes compliance with the open meeting law, but other things that has started to fall in place. And then the second piece of it, which we did talk about at length, I think, at the goals session, was about putting something in place that's going to serve as education and hopefully help us do a better job at open meeting law compliance.
So to sort of bring together what you both just said, I know when I just went and got sworn into the Master Planning Committee, I was given a packet by Trish that gave me posting of the agenda, who should be invited, how you handle a meeting, what goes into minutes, all that's already done.
Right.
I think what they're looking to do is have a policy in place that makes sure what's handed to them actually gets done.
yes,
Yes.
exactly.
I read it, Trish.
I think as this gets written out and we know what we're looking at, we can revisit it, Pat, if we want it to be a policy or just guidance.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
guidance
I
is
think
fine.
I can write policy and/or guidance or
Yeah.
something, policy/guidance, and then we'll just figure it out. But I think, I agree with the discussion we had in the work session, that we got to do something to elevate awareness and
Right.
get something more systematic in place.
Right, and I just hope it goes beyond minutes, is all I'm saying.
Okay.
Because especially in this day and age where, someone can walk in and say, I don't like the way you did it, right? And you just want to make sure your Ts are crossed and Is are dotted.
Yeah. All right, so I need help on the dates here. There's 2 pieces to this. And I think most of it's falling on you.
Yeah, I think probably by end of November.
For both, or,
I think our first draft, yeah.
okay.
First draft end of November.
Yep.
I was going to say that I was willing to give you to the spring.
So then we can decide whether it meets what we're looking for or it doesn't. We can redirect it from there.
Okay. Number 10 is Public Works Infrastructure. Whoops. There were 2 pieces that we identified, and I had a question about another one, but the first was conduct the listening session on the transportation infrastructure. We talked about it as one session for the town. My question when I was putting this together to myself was, should we have 2 sessions, and should we dedicate one to North Chelmsford and then one for the rest of the town, because if we have one for the town, I think North Chelmsford's going to take up at least an hour of that anyway.
Well, that happened in the first listening session.
Right, so should we just,
75% of it was North Chelmsford
just
Road.
to give the whole town its fair process, my thought was maybe we should have 2 listening sessions so that the town one doesn't get monopolized by North Chelmsford and Ledge Road.
Hold them both at the senior center, or would you do one there and one?
Yes.
Have it closer to where you.
I would have both of them. My thought, well, I think the senior center worked out well because you can't predict how many people are going to show up.
What if you did one at the senior center, one at like the CCA?
Oh, sure,
You know,
yeah.
I'm just thinking.
Just
make it
not
easier.
here.
Yeah, no.
That's fine.
Yeah. But, so question 1, do we think 1 or 2?
I think 2 would be good because, like you said, there's about, the last one, there were a lot of people from North Chelmsford. And even though, everybody's concerned about traffic all across the town, they're probably the people that don't.
Yeah, I don't want to shortchange the rest of the town.
Exactly.
So,
When do you want to have it done by?
well, that's my question next. So there's a North Chelmsford one and there's the rest of the town.
I think you're doing this closest together as possible, so there's no hard feelings of you did one before the other, and if we could do them before Thanksgiving.
There's a lot, that's a lot to
I
do
know.
before Thanksgiving,
Mhm.
with everything else. we
Town
have.
meeting
Yeah, I
too.
don't think you're gonna get there.
Well, then you're gonna have to wait till,
What are you thinking over there, Paul?
Yeah, I mean.
January it is.
No, it can't be January, no, because you have to
Well,
have
some of
weather
this
where
is
people can
kinda
come out.
urgent.
It seems kind of urgent. I think if you go out in that hallway and you say
They're
you're not
still
going to do
there.
something till the spring, they're going to come back through that door and say, we're not waiting till the spring. I mean, I would think, I think you could do it in October before, once you get past the push for town meeting, in other words,
Yeah.
and then maybe in that beginning of October, once everything is done, do you know what I'm saying? Because then I think you probably could do it. Because I just think it's just too urgent to
so
do.
you're talking about like the 2-week lull before town
Yeah,
meeting?
exactly, that's what I'm thinking, in other words, once you and the FinCom, everybody wraps up their work, and the book goes to press, I'm thinking the first or second week of October. I think that would be the time to do it, because,
So maybe when Christina gets back, we can work on trying to schedule something or bring up dates in our next meeting.
yeah. Although that's, yeah. I think,
So the 2 listening sessions are the first half of October.
Yeah.
The other thing I have on here was the prioritized plan for the road infrastructure improvements. And I think, Paul, some of this was dependent on town meeting funding.
yeah, you could probably do that in November. I mean, I think you do that afterwards. You have the hearings in October, you get your money from town meeting, and then in November, you do your planning, and then they spend the winter engineering and designing, and then hopefully hit stuff next summer. So I think you're probably talking November for that.
The question that I had remaining on this one was, we didn't talk about during our work session, but we have that ongoing correspondence and discussion with DEP on the sewer main break and some of the infrastructure things that they wanted us to address as part of that. Is that part of this goal, or in terms of
I mean,
public
we're going to be
works?
discussing that next meeting regarding the, so I think it's in that same timeframe, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's, November, because there will be, in that consent
Is
order,
everybody
there will be
okay if I
dates.
add that, just so we don't lose
Yeah,
lock on it? It's, okay.
and that'll involve ARPA monies as well.
Okay. Number 11 was the discussion that we had on trying to work on a growth strategy with the Planning Board, Finance Committee, and School Committee. The way I did the measurement, just because this involves so many other boards and committees, I said, well, at least we want to like kick it off and initiate it. I don't know how much, depending what happens with that, I don't know how far we're going to get, or if you want to have this be something that concludes by the end of June. We never really talked through what that looked like. It was at the end of the meeting.
I would think it'd probably be after the first of the year, because hopefully this fall, the master plan gets
I was just
completed.
going to ask that, when is that done?
I think they're trying to wrap it up, and then once you kind of get the master plan wrapped up, then you kind of can use that as the fulcrum to how you implement both the master plan and this whole overall growth strategy.
So in the January to June timeframe?
Yeah, I think so.
Because the master plan committee is getting ready to, we're talking about the implementation of the master plan.
Right. And I think that's-
Committee, you know, to.
Yeah, and I think
the
this
next
is part
step.
of that, yeah.
When is the master plan supposed to wrap up? By the end of this year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then we want to appoint an implementation committee, so it might work well with.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 12 was cybersecurity vigilance, that we identified as important, and then we forgot to talk about it, or I forgot to talk about it before we adjourned. So I did talk to Paul a little bit, and we came up with maybe a minimum of quarterly reporting on the status, and then having Paul work with his staff to define and achieve some type of standard. Does that sound okay? Okay, Paul, when do you want to commit to that?
Quarterly reports, where are we?
Well, that's, I'm more on the standard part. The quarterly reports are going to happen, right?
Yep.
I'll just put that as quarterly.
Yep.
What about the second part? Is that the whole fiscal year?
Yeah, I think
Or to
so.
June?
But hopefully by then, we'll definitely be no later than that.
Okay. Number 13 is succession planning. I know there was some question about doing this or not, but this is my pass at it.
Yeah.
To inform talent management. And then the idea was get an initial one developed and have HR just identify a process for managing it in the future?
Yeah.
Okay, so by when do you want to do that, Paul?
We're at Labor Day. Maybe, can you give me 6 months probably to do it thoroughly? I mean, I really want to do it
Well, as it
right.
stands now, we're all going to be collapsing by New
Yeah,
Year's.
exactly, that's what I'm thinking, yeah, I'm just, I'd say like
say
April
June.
1st or something like
Yeah,
that.
I was going to say fourth quarter.
Fourth quarter, yeah,
Okay.
fourth quarter, yeah.
Q4, all right. Okay, and then we had this discussion about the town common and extensions through North Road and the historic district. I wasn't sure how much we could actually do and implement at this point, because I know we're going to require DPW and others for other things. So I did the measurement at conceptual ideas established and priorities identified, if that makes sense. Just because I wasn't sure what was really entailed.
What do you think?
And this was a joint one. Plus, we just have an awful lot of heavy lifting in some of these other ones. That's why I left it at concepts, and we could see what comes out of it. I don't know what this is. Is this like a couple of meetings we iterate and see what we come up with and figure out who else we need input from, or is this having public input?
I think it would use some public input,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
And some board input.
Oh, yeah, definitely board input, but yeah.
Board input,
public
historic,
too, yeah.
pre-committee,
Yeah,
so forth.
several
Big. I
committees,
mean,
yeah.
the growth strategy thing's huge, too.
I know.
That's why I'm concerned about doing both of those.
Are you suggesting maybe we don't do 14 this year? Put it on hold?
I think it should at least be on hold, because the growth strategy is going to take up so much bandwidth in those areas. I'm just concerned that we're saying that we're going to try to do this, and I'm just wondering if we're really going to be able to at this point. I mean, maybe further down the year, we might be able to pull it in, but
could,
We could set a goal just to have the public input sessions
Yeah.
and invite the
We could do
boards to
that.
that,
All
and
right.
just get some information to
Yeah.
inform goals next year.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be done in the next 2 or 3 months, so yeah, for sure.
Would that be okay?
Yeah.
would it be
Is that-
possible for me to visit some of the other committees that we were to maybe outline as liaison to them to find out if they want to be part of the process or give input to the process? I wouldn't mind going to Historic District, bringing up, going to Historic Commission, bringing up, going to Tree Committee, bringing up, and saying, how involved do you want to be?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, we all could do that to all our liaisons that might have anything to say about it. You're right.
Right, for all our liaison assignments,
Yeah.
and then also just invite them all to the public input if.
Right.
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
But maybe we just start getting the word out that this is something we want to address down the road and
Yep, they
sort
can
of
start to
gauge the
work it
interest.
in their committees and be
You might
prepared.
even find the CCA wants input on their front lawn and there, obviously, maybe a community outreach to the different businesses and churches.
So the measurement is really going to be an initial input from public and boards and committees? It's not going to be to like come up with all the ideas, right?
Yeah, engage interest.
All right, does anybody have, should I just put that by Q4 of next year? We can do it sometime after the first of the year?
Yeah.
Okay, and then the last one was the last round of the policies.
Yep.
Pat, are you still okay with leading the charge on that this year?
Yeah.
Do you want, when do you want that to be, Q4 or?
We can put it, I hope to have it before that, but sure. That's a,
Whatever you want.
well, why don't we say the end of this year?
End of December?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I'll get that edited and I'll get it out to everybody and out to Christina to put on the website. Paul, you're up next.
Okay.
Bid awards.
Just have the one item for bid award. As noted in your packet, the Public Works solicited the bids for the catch basin and street sweeping debris removal. In this instance, there were 3 bidders. The qualified low bidder is WL French. That bid price is $35.95 per ton. As reference, we had done a similar award back in February, as noted in the memo. This price is actually better than that price. It was $39.75 back when bids were opened at the end of February. So we ask your confirmation of the bid award to WL French for the submitted bid price of $35.95 per ton for the remainder of this fiscal year.
Any questions?
Have you used these guys before?
Yeah, they've been doing it now. They're doing a great
Okay.
job.
Okay.
Yeah, it's worked out well.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the bid award for a catch basin and street sweeping debris removal to WL French as presented.
Anyone want a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
I abstain.
Oh, you abstained? Ken abstained, 4-0, 1 abstention. Sorry.
It's okay.
Go ahead, Paul, we're on town
Okay.
manager reports.
Yeah, just a few items this evening. Just wanted to let the board and the public know that the air quality testing has taken place since your last meeting, and we expect to report in a couple of weeks, and so we should have the report for you in September regarding the results of that testing. You may have heard from some residents, I think you have, about setting up equipment at different locations, so, and I think the good part is it was on representative weather, so it wasn't a day like, we've had where it's deluge and the plants wouldn't be running. It was on some of the hot, humid days that we've had, so I just wanted to let the board and the community know that the air quality testing has been completed, and again, we received the report next month. We'll get it to you and have a presentation here. In your packets is the second draft of the fall annual town meeting warrant. When you next convene your next regularly scheduled meeting in 3 weeks on September 13th, you'll be scheduled to sign the warrant for the fall annual town meeting, which is on October 18th, which is 5 weeks from that date. It'll slightly change from what we have this evening, but basically, at this point, we've got about 24 articles. The significant changes from your initial draft that I provided you 2 weeks ago is I have placed an article on for funding for Freeman Lake weed control, which I'll discuss later on this agenda this evening. There's also the Community Preservation Committee met, and they need a housekeeping article, for lack of anything else, to rescind unexpended appropriations from from previously completed projects. So that's new from the draft we had 2 weeks ago. I spoke to Finance Director John Souza earlier today. That related to that will also be an article to rescind the authorized but unissued borrowing on the Warren Pole land acquisition. You may recall, I think we authorized 1.2 million. I think we spent 1.1 something. So even though we didn't borrow that money, we want to remove that authorization out there to clean up the books and get that. So that'll be another article that'll probably get us to, so, and then the last one, which was new, and there was communication I had with Town Council Paul Haverty today and Deb Taverna, is that there will be a proposed amendment to the demolition delay bylaw. Again, some clarifying language, so that will be on there as well, and I'll get that, we'll finalize that, and then I'll be working with Paul Haverty and the Planning Board. They've advertised the Stormwater Design Guideline bylaw, so I'll work with council and to get the language for that article, which, you remember these stormwater ones are never brief, they're all lengthy, but we'll get those resolved. So again, we're looking at roughly 25 articles. The one that's a big unknown, quite frankly, is the rezoning of 255 Princeton Street, and then associated with that would be the community preservation funding for the affordable housing that would be constructed, which was approved last week by the Community Preservation Committee. Again, I leave it here as a placeholder. At this point, I don't have a date for when the developer, Trammell Crow, wishes to meet with you and the planning board for further discussions, nor have I seen a draft of the proposed warrant article, and if it'll make it. So again, if it's not here in time, then it'll be off. As we discussed in the past, it's something that could be addressed at a special town meeting later in the fall or what have you, but that's sort of where I'm at this point in terms of the warrant. So again, when September rolls around in roughly a week and a half or two, we'll get final language. It'll go out in your packet, and then you'll sign the warrant on the 13th. And then I imagine FinCom's going to meet real quickly after that, because they want to get their book out 2 weeks in advance of the and they need about a week to publish it. So basically, that mid to end of September will be busy, and also we'll need to discuss the articles as well for your recommendations at that time. So, and then the other thing that's going to happen related to this is Town Accountant Darlene Lucio will be in at your next meeting. She expects and fully expects to have a financial report on the year that just closed, the certified free cash, the sources of that, and then how we move forward. And again, that's going to generate discussion, because I think in my discussions with Darlene, and I think if you've seen what's happened at the state level and the federal level, the towns, much like the state, fared better than the initial financial conservative forecast. So there'll be discussions on how the free cash was generated and how it should be used and so forth. So that'll take some time. So again, I've discussed this with the chair, with Virginia. We may need another meeting in September. Probably that extra, we're scheduled to meet the 13th and the 27th. We may need to meet also on the 20th. So I'll use that as one of those save the date kind of warnings, because if you recall our discussions tonight, we're going to have this town meeting warrant, we're going to have the financial discussion in terms of the fiscal year, and you've got the 3 reports should all be in by your next meeting, in terms of the PFAS, the sewer study, and the PFAS sewer study, and the consent order regarding Southwell. And I know, and I feel the same way. We don't want to have a meeting that starts at 6 and goes to 11. This is not fair. It's not productive. So I'll work with the chair to have a discussion in terms of a reasonable agenda, and then we may hold some things off until the the 20th. if
Does
necessary.
anybody have any issue with planning on the 20th if we need it? Saving that date? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So that's where we are with the warrant at this point. In terms of the financial audit, a follow-up item from the last meeting, I did speak with the auditors, with Kev Sullivan. They fully understand and have waived the final year of the audit agreement. So we'll be seeing them in November, and then after that, and when we turn the calendar year, we can discuss with the town accountant and such a process for an audit firm selection. And so have that done in a timely manner for the completion of the current fiscal year. So that's that. And then the redistricting letter, again, Virginia, we sent those out. Those were finalized and were issued. So I wanted to let the community and the board formally know that those have been sent out. Related, one to the House and one to the Senate chair, and related to that, where this redistricting stands right now is the first, the data has been released in a traditional format, and they're going to have a more user-friendly format next month. That's how we got the raw data numbers on population and housing units and so forth. What's happened at the legislative level is there's the House and the Senate have formed a conference committee to resolve the slight differences in the bills, so that they will basically enact, the expectation is they're going to enact a law that's going to have the state redistricting done before our re-precincting. And so that's probably what's going to unfold in the weeks ahead. So again, we're working at our end, and Tricia's doing really the point person on this in terms of trying to work with Secretary of State's office, get the maps, because we know we're going to make adjustments and trying to fit everything in. But it's pretty evident that we're going to know our legislative districts before we have any plan for precincting, considered by the legislature. So that's where things stand. So our input has been provided. I think once Labor Day moves around, you're going to see them quickly moving. They've obviously, they're already touting how many hearings they've already had. They're going to have more hearings, and then I expect they're going to enact something realistically, probably the end of September, early October timeframe, and send it to the governor. In the event that the governor would veto it, they're going to have enough time to override the veto and then have it in place by the first week of November, so that those members are established by district a year before the election, which is their goal frame. And that probably means for us that our pre-precincting probably goes in November, December timeframe, so that we have our ducks done in time for our local town meeting precincts and such. So that's where it's standing at this point. Okay. So again, the chair issued those letters. And then I did want to just point out recognize, and I had sent this to the board, I think, prior to the last meeting, but it didn't make the agenda, and that was just recognize Gary Ryan's effort in terms of securing a $46,356 grant from the Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program for firefighter wellness and fitness equipment, and this will be used to outfit the new gym at Station 2, which is the North Fire Station, which was the modular units, as the board, anybody who's given by, they were installed last Friday, and again, the expectation is the project should be completed by the end of October. So again, I want to recognize Gary for his efforts to secure that grant, and then also just note for those who've gone by, and that we're looking probably 2 months from now to have the project wrapped up. So that's great. And then the final thing I want to touch upon is the Freeman Lake weed control. It's nothing like we've ever seen out there. I mean, I've been here 15 years. I've talked to others. The incredible rainfall that we've had just washes, nutrients and such into the lake, it's unbearable. As the board knows, the community knows, we had to close swimming for a period because the weed growth, even in the swim area, it just wasn't safe. for swimmers in terms of the lifeguard being able to see people in the water and so forth. DPW worked to at least alleviate that immediate concern because we have lifeguards scheduled through the end of this calendar week because we always run the lifeguards until school reopens, which is next Tuesday. So we'll have lifeguards till the end this Saturday. We had looked at this 3 years ago, and Mike McCall was the point person at that time, and we obtained a proposal from Solitude with Lake Management, and this was the same company that does the work in conjunction with the town and the Hart Pond Village Association. Basically, it involves herbicides, application of herbicide treatment, and namely this EPA and Mass registered aquatic herbicide known as fluoridone. That, at the time, 3 years ago, we were looking at a $60,000 type of project to treat the entire lake. And then you've got a annual, like we see at Hart Pond, $10,000 to $20,000 per year management. A year like this, it's more expensive. I mean, the board may be aware, the public was aware, the Hart Pond was closed for a day last week so they could go out and do weed control, which is not something that has occurred in recent summers because of, again, the nature of what's transpired. So again, as I mentioned earlier, I put a placeholder on the fall town meeting warrant, and it's a very vague placeholder, meaning for Freeman Lake weed control, because anytime you're applying any kind of a herbicide or, lack of a better word, chemical, that raises concerns with the public. It raises concerns with the water district, I'm sure. As Virginia knows, I sent this proposal language in terms of the text aspects of it to the water district, North Chelmsford Water District, and have asked for some response. I've not received any acknowledgement or response at this point in time, but I imagine at some point we'll have to engage that prior to town meeting in terms of, is this acceptable? Like most things, like everything's acceptable in a proper level, I guess, but I don't want to prejudge the discussions, but that's really what you can do. The other option, the non-chemical options, are drawdowns and or weed harvesting. Drawdowns are basically you remove the boards from the dam to a low level of the lake, and then you hope that the winter's cold enough that it kills the weeds or just reduces the weeds. And the weed harvesting is, they have these harvesting machines, which is like a lawnmower. You put them on the pond and they cut, and then you harvest and you remove, but then it's like your lawn, it just grows back. So those are the realistic options, and the effective ones are, and again, I did look at this. The state does have guidelines. The Massachusetts Department, of Fisheries and Wildlife and so forth. Environmental agencies have guidance, and this is included in their guidance about the applications of herbicides. So I think those are discussions that will take place in the meetings ahead, because it's. And then what I did ask, I asked the company to give us a revised proposal, because clearly what's there now is greatly expanded. And what you end up doing is, this is a long treatment herbicide, so basically, if we're going to do something in terms of funding and do the work, you really have to have that funding in place this fall, because what they do is when the ice gets out in the spring, they apply the pellets and herbicides, and then you have a long exposure to it. And then basically when you then get to the late spring, summer months, you're in good shape. So it's not something like you shock a pool and it goes away. This is something that you apply and it stays on for weeks. And in essence, that's how the process works. And what it does is it kills not only the plant, but it goes into the roots and kills the roots. So anyway, that's where we're at. So I put a placeholder in fall town meeting. I've reached out to the North Chelmsford Water District. And again, we can have discussions over the next 2 months heading into town meeting.
Okay, thank you.
That's my report for this evening, and I do have the an appointment for the Arts and Technology Education Fund Committee. We received an application from Candace Chase to fill a term ending June 30th, 2024.
Any questions?
I'll make a motion that we approve the appointment of Candace Chase to the 3-year term for the Arts and Technology Education Fund expiring June 30th, 2024.
I second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
Congratulations, Candy.
Thank you.
So, as background for the next agenda item, and we have Trish and Paul Haverty here. If you recall, back in October of 2019, we met before a town meeting to talk about appointment of KP Law. At that time, the discussion was, and the correspondence was around elections. And so Trish had the motion that was made was for the clerk and the board of registrars. The meeting was not recorded, so we just have the minutes. But we had received input from Paul Haverty in several forms of correspondence that he was fine with having KP Law assist the clerk and the registrars for the purpose of election-related issues. That vote at the time that we took did not have an end date, and the way it was phrased in the minutes was the appointment of KP Law as special municipal counsel for the town clerk and the board of registrars as requested. And that was also preceded by the statement that Paul Haverty submitted an email supporting this appointment. And in his email, it was about elections. And I believe the discussion at that time was about the elections. So the question that has come up is, one, we didn't put an end date, so should we do an appointment where the appointment term coincides with the other appointments we've made for town council and labor council, meaning ending in June of '22. And the second question is whether that appointment is for the specific purpose of election issues, or whether it's a general appointment for the town clerk's office. And I'm going to invite both Trish and Paul to speak on that, if that's okay with everyone.
Is it okay if I go first? Good evening. Thank you very much. Tricia Duras, Town Clerk. I just want to clarify that although my email correspondence with Paul Haverty was confusing, my letter that was dated on October 8th to the Select Board was clear that I asked for the Town Clerk's office and the Board of Registrars. What caused the confusion was my correspondence with Paul Haverty. I looped him in out of respect and courtesy. But my intention, my request, the motion that was made and the vote that was taken was based on my request to ask for KP Law and Lauren Goldberg of KP Law to be town counsel, special counsel for the town clerk's office and the Board of Registrars. So if you read my letter dated October 8th, that is the request that I made, and that is exactly the motion that was made, was exactly taken from my letter. So that being said, I totally agree with the term being coterminous with town council. If the board is looking to amend that motion from October 21st, at that time there was no term end date, so I don't have a problem with being coterminous, but my request does still remain the same because there's so many other issues in the town clerk's office where KP Law is an expert. It's not just elections. So I apologize for the confusion with my communication with Paul Haverty, but originally when I was first talking to him about it on via telephone, it was generally speaking looking for special counsel for the town clerk's office, because public records is also a huge issue that KP Law is expert on, and I need quite a bit of help from them regarding public records. So my request to the board today is that if I could please again reappoint KP Law, Lauren Goldberg, as special counsel to the town clerk's office with a term that is coterminous with town council.
So the only thing, I mean, I have your letter up, Trish.
Yep.
The opening statement says Town Clerk and the Board of Registrars. The rest of that and the discussion that we had that October was all around elections. And so to me, it's an interpretation of, was it the Town Clerk's office and the Board of Registrars, or was it a collective Town Clerk and Board of Registrars for the purpose of elections, which is what was articulated in all of the other correspondence?
The only other correspondence that talks about specifically just elections, I mean, I punctuated the need for elections because of the 2020 election season. That was punctuated because that was critical. But the only communication that I had that was specific to election, in my communication with Paul Haverty, I made a mistake and I didn't refer to my actual letter before I responded to him. But my intention was Town Clerk and Board of Registrars, which was all encompassing. That was my intention.
Okay.
I understand the confusion. The motion did correspond with my request, so.
But it was as we had discussed it in that meeting, which was really about elections. And I went back and I looked at Paul Haverty's letter to Ken at the time. And
I understand.
I just want to just say what my recollection
Go right
and
ahead.
understanding was, and we'll invite the rest of the board to talk too, but Paul Haverty's letter was clearly for the purpose of assisting with election-related issues. And I'll go back to my fellow board members who were there, but I don't recall ever having a discussion that said we're going to do something broader than what Paul had already agreed to. And I guess what matters more now is what we do going forward, so.
Yeah, exactly, going back and forth.
My understanding from that October discussion was that it was the Town Clerk and Board of Registrars as an entity for elections, not the Town Clerk's office and the registrars.
Only because
So
I'm the one
that's
who
just
made the request. I can tell you what my intention was.
Okay.
And I can tell you that I made a mistake in my communication with
Okay,
Attorney Haverty.
fair.
But I know what my intention was, and it was for the Town Clerk's office and the Board of Registrars. So that is my request to you today.
Okay, thank you. Paul, do you want to say something?
Good evening, Madam Chair. Again, Paul Haverty, Town Council. You have the correspondence that I had with the town clerk back in 2019. I did specifically ask the question whether the request was for all town clerk issues or specifically limited to elections and Board of Registrars issues. She replied that she would prefer to be for all town clerk issues. And then I responded that I saw the potential for some conflict between issues that related not only to town clerk, but also general town council issues. So my recommendation was that it be simply for elections and Board of Registrars. Of course, that's just my recommendation. Of course, the board is free to do whatever it wants to do. I would say in the 2 years since that has occurred, I don't think there's been a lot of things that could be considered to have been conflicts. I do think that there have been a number of occasions, not a great number, but 5 or 6, where I have been contacted by town personnel with regards to public records requests and for advice on that. And perhaps they have not actually shared with town clerk that they have sought opinion of town council. So I think that there is that sort of touches upon the areas of conflict that I had a bit of a concern with, but I don't think it has to this point been a major issue. As I noted in the letter that I submitted to the select board, I'm happy to work with the town clerk in any manner that the select board wants me to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Discussion?
I think, given how strongly the town clerk feels about using KP Law for the functions of the town clerk, I think we should leave it as it is. As Paul Haverty just mentioned, there hasn't been a lot of conflict, and I'm sure if there is, it can be resolved.
And how do you reconcile that with other public? There are other public records laws requests that come up outside of the clerk's office that he's addressed. So that's one key area where he was saying that's that's
But
an
isn't
overlap.
that where they're supposed to go, is to the town clerk's office?
Not necessarily.
I'm the super records, what am I, super RAO, super records access officer, and the public records
You need to get it to a
compliance
microphone, Tricia.
Sorry. Okay. As the Public Records Compliance Officer for the town of Chelmsford, all public records questions should go through me. I did not realize that they were contacting Paul Haverty, but I should be aware of any issues with public records law because I am the Public Records Compliance Officer and the super RAO as appointed by the town manager.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ken, you're the only one of the 5 that was also part of the discussions previously. George was absent.
Yeah, and I went back and sort of watched just to refresh, and I pulled out my notes. My understanding was the push was a special request because of the amount of elections we had last year. That was my recollection.
That was mine as well.
So, I guess what I'm looking for is, based on the documentation and the discussion tonight, do we want to appoint KP Law to continue to support elections, or broader than that?
Can I make a suggestion? May I step up one more time? Whereas some of the records in my office involve land use, I would always defer to Paul Haverty for any land use issues in the town clerk's office. Can we modify, we're going to modify because we want to do coterminous with town council, I presume. Can we modify it so that it specifies town clerk, board of registrars, and public records? Because I can't imagine that there's anything else. I mean, town meeting, Paul Haverty does a fantastic job. Land use, he does a fantastic job. I can't imagine that there's really any other area that I would need to reach out to KP Law, with the exception of elections and public records specifically. So if you are going to modify the motion from October 21st.
I need clarification, kind of where your head's at, because I get a little uncomfortable when you say I'll go talk to BBH about land use, because we hired the firm as town council because they have capabilities there that are broader than land use, even though Attorney Haverty's expertise may be in that area. So I have a concern about partitioning things based on an individual's expertise as opposed to what we hired an entire firm to support us with. And we get a lot more support other than land use.
I understand.
So-
I understand from a town perspective, that's your broader picture.
Yeah.
I just know that from the town clerk's perspective and the town clerk's office and the functions within, we have at our disposal currently the premier expertise in municipal law when it comes to elections, public records, open meeting law, conflict of interest, all of those things that I have to deal with on a day-to-day basis.
So now you've just broadened into an area
Well,
that I'm
there's a
really
lot of-
concerned about, because Paul Haverty handles our open meeting law already. We don't
sure.
have an attorney assigned to a department. So,
Well, I do currently, because that's what the motion that was voted on back in October. I do currently have special counsel, for the town clerk's office. I understand. I don't know how to explain the urgency when it comes to certain specific functions that I do and having expertise. Now, again, no disrespect for Paul. Paul and I work very well together. We sit there at town meeting. We have a lot of conversations when it comes to certain things in the office. My question is there's not that much of a distinction when it comes to price. I just know that I can rely on the person that does all the presentations at all the Massachusetts Municipal Clerk Association conferences. They provide constant re-education of things on a regular basis. To have that person be the person that I can go to that has the answers right there when I need them on a timely basis, it's invaluable to me. So, do you have any other questions about?
I'll just tell you, stay straight up, Trish. I understand the way this is written for the town clerk and the board of registrars. I was at the meeting. Okay, Ken was at the meeting.
I was at the
Pat
meeting
was at
as
the
well.
meeting. You were
Yep.
at the meeting. We have written input multiple times from Paul Haverty. And the, let me, you
I
gotta
know,
let
no
me finish.
disrespect,
The-
Virginia,
The,
I know.
the whole intent that I recall behind that was for the purpose of elections.
Okay.
So, and I'm not gonna go back and argue that whether you have had them all along for your office or whether it was just for elections. I think what we have to figure out now is what makes sense going forward, and does a single department in the town get their own appointed town council, which is what I think you're asking for.
That's what I asked for then, it's what I ask for now, and for the same reasons. So again, my request, and that's all it is my request. I didn't have to reach out to Paul Haverty. I wanted to make sure that he understood the position I was taking. I wanted to make sure he understood there was no hard feelings, that I was going to be asking for this for my office because I feel that strongly about it. That's why I reached out to Paul. I didn't need to. I didn't need to ask him to write a letter. I didn't need to do
understand
that.
Paul
I
Cullen,
came to
when
the
we've
Board of
had- When we've
Selectmen.
had other open meeting law questions, who have we gone to? We don't go to KP
Again,
Law for that.
my request, again, this is as the town clerk, I made a request to the
May I
select
get my
board.
question answered, please?
It doesn't happen that frequently. I'm trying to think of,
I'm thinking like the Board of Health had a question, had something in recent times.
We had one.
We had one,
We had
and it was
one.
all done through town
oh, I think you
council.
went, I think you went through town council if you, yeah.
And when we have
Yeah.
other open meeting law questions, when we're dealing with the minutes processes, we're doing all of that with town council. We're not doing that with KP Law.
Right.
Is that correct?
Right, and then looking at your goal this evening, you're going to have a goal about minutes and processes. I guess the question is how do you wish to have that proceed
And,
going
and
forward?
will the town clerk be looped into those
Right.
processes?
Right.
But again, I have to just quote, I am writing to request that you appoint Lauren Goldberg of KP Law as special counsel to the town clerk and the Board of registrars. That's a quote from my request. That's the way I
Thank
asked.
you.
Can we ask Paul Haverty? Paul, can I
Sure.
please step up if you don't mind? I'm just curious your take on, public record requests and your firm, turnaround times, depth of knowledge.
I'm not going to stand here and tell you that we have the same breadth of experience that KP Law does with regards to that issue, because, again, they represent the vast majority of municipalities in the state, and they see every type of question. So I don't think that you're going to see a significant difference in turnaround times. Generally speaking, the public records request questions are going to be fairly straightforward. I don't think, you're seeing crazy off-the-wall circumstances, certain things disregarded, but I don't see it as a matter of great need to go with a separate, for public records. I understand the purpose for the request. I don't object to it. I don't, it's not going to get my nose out of joint. If you choose to allow KP Law to serve as special town counsel as, relates to public records requests. However, the point with regards to the open meeting law issue sort of underscores what my concern was before, is when you have two different councils addressing issues and you've got multiple boards involved, you do run the potential for something being overlooked, for something being sent to the wrong party, for, again, if I responded to a question from a board with regards to an open meeting law issue, I'm sorry, with regards to a public records request issue, and that's not being conveyed to the town clerk's office, there's a potential for something getting lost there. So that sort of goes to what my concern was. I think it can be addressed. You can certainly make sure that all boards know, public records requests go to, KP Law, or they go to BBH. You can certainly have the proper oversight to make sure that the things don't fall through the cracks. But that was really my main concern, was the potential for different boards having oversight over an issue and going really in two different directions. And certainly, the last thing you want is to run into a situation where the town clerk's getting advice from KP Law, and a board member has reached out to me, and, if there's any difference, even slight, in the nature of that advice, that creates an issue. So I think we want to, at minimum, make sure that we are properly addressing who these types of inquiries go to.
Okay. I mean, clearly there's already, someone's been talking to you and not going to Tricia Reddy, there's an issue, because.
And I'm not saying it's happened, a great number of times, but it has happened.
If it happens once, that's a problem.
It's a potential problem.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know that, the response that I would have provided, differed anything from what the response would have been from KP Law. It was probably exactly the same. But I just want to make sure it's a single, entity that is responsible for this, and that we don't run into problems with different masters, essentially.
Okay, thank you.
Why don't we go around? George, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts?
I always thought it was just for elections, like I said earlier. That's what I thought it was.
What do you want to do going forward?
Pardon?
What is your recommendation going forward?
Well, that's what I thought. That's what I thought it was all along. I would have assumed that that was content with it, and that's what I'd like to see, basically.
Mark?
I think
Can you get to the mic?
I think there should be a single entity handling those, because I've already seen some situations where there have been different points of view on some open meeting situations that we've already encountered. So,
And that single entity being the town council or a new council?
that I'm not sure of. I don't have enough experience in that area to know.
Okay. Ken?
You want her to go first?
Okay.
I'll go. No, I think we addressed this, when we, I thought we had addressed this when we approved town council for the next terms. So,
We didn't.
well, we didn't specifically, but we awarded Paul
Town
contract, town council. So, the way I'm feeling is I would be nervous. Obviously, it's happened a few times with differing answers and people not knowing who the point of contact is. So I would rather it stay the way I recalled it was, which was for election purposes.
Okay. Pat?
As I said before, I think if the town clerk is comfortable with KP Law and has used them for the past almost 2 years now in every capacity, or just about every capacity having to do with the town clerk, and even as Paul Haverty has mentioned, KP Law does have additional resources that can handle most things that come up probably in a better timeline than his firm.
Actually, he said there'd be no difference.
Well, he did say that they had more resources.
Yes.
Is that true, Paul?
Yeah, that was correct. I said minimal difference.
And given that we extended the other councils in the same capacities as they were before, I think we should extend this one in the same capacity that it is now.
So my feeling is that the capacity that I thought we were assigning them to was for elections. I'm kind of at where Ken's at, where we appointed BBH as town council, and before we did that, Paul Haverty had said again that he was fine with KP Law keeping labor and elections. I am just concerned about, I think if we've assigned BBH as town council, I don't think that trying to pull things out of that scope that weren't already agreed to in terms of labor and elections is the right or the professional thing to do. And so I would be inclined to extend the KP Law, as we did for labors, for elections through the end of June, because I think Paul Haverty is already handling much of the other town council stuff for the town. And I wasn't aware that there was more than that going on. But if it was, that's fine. We've got a miscommunication or a misunderstanding in intent or what the motion was. But I think we have to clean it up going forward. And right now, I don't think it's clean if we're using town council for things like open meeting law and public records law, and we're using KP Law for the same types of things that may or may not come up in other departments or other boards and committees. And I agree with Mark that it should be one. And I personally just don't feel right about pulling that out from BBH, because I think the intent was that they had that when we appointed them as town council.
So it was your impression that when we reappointed BBH as town council, they understood that pulled the other things other than elections back to them? Is that correct?
We had that discussion, I believe, that you're still okay with KP Law doing labor and elections, because BBH doesn't do labor, and while they can do
Yeah,
elections.
I don't remember it being specific to just labor and elections, but we could have said
I
that.
think we specifically asked Paul that question, and he said yes.
Well, I don't remember if we did it in a meeting. I know I asked it, but I honestly don't remember when, where. Go ahead, Paul.
I think it probably wasn't directly addressed, because up until
My assumption was it was elections.
a week ago, my assumption was that they had only been appointed for elections and voter registrars. So, and again, there have been public records issues that have come up, and of course, I do deal with the town clerk on a number of other issues, so I wasn't aware that there were issues ongoing that were being dealt with by KP Law. And again, I don't have any problem with it. I'm not complaining about it. I was unaware, so it was not at all addressed when the select board reappointed BBH.
So,
if there's no motion tonight,
yeah, we have to,
stay with this.
we don't have an end date, first of all. We want to, I think that it would be a better.
Clarification.
Right, we need to clean this up.
Mhm.
And if we're
So let's
going
speak
to,
of it
if
to
we're
the end
going,
date.
if we're going to appoint KP Law for any scope of support for the clerk's office or the registrars, we need to define what that is. Is it everything having to do with the clerk, or is it just for elections? Or, right, and then I believe we should put an endpoint on it that's coincident with the other endpoints, which is June 30th of 2022, and then we look at all those appointments again. But right now, it's not clear.
So, I mean, if that's the case, you want to make a motion?
Sure.
I mean, I'd make
If
a
we're ready
motion-
for one.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I'd make a motion that we appoint KP Law to labor and elections.
They're already appointed to labor, so it's just what else you want to do beyond labor.
All right, then elections, and have the and border registrars.
That was what you had suggested before, right? Elections and Board of Registrars?
Okay, But should we say labor because we're putting an end date on it?
We already did that appointment
That's
in
all-
another meeting.
And the end date is
Yeah,
all set.
That's all done.
All right, so I'll make a motion that we appoint KB Law in regards to items regarding elections and Board of Registrars through June 30th, 2022.
Any discussion? Or does anybody second that motion?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 4-1. Thank you, Trish and Paul. Okay. The next item on the agenda is just an announcement regarding determination of releasability of executive session minutes. The following minutes were reviewed and deemed not releasable at this time. The amended June 28th minutes for 2021, July 22nd, 2021, and July 26th for 2021. Those are all executive session. Okay, that brings us to liaison reports and referrals. Pat?
I just have one thing this evening. Last week, I attended the ribbon cutting for Santana's third barbershop in the area. They already have, this one was in Vinyl Square. They already have a barbershop in Chelmsford Center and one in Lowell. It's a nice facility. I forgot to get my hair cut, though, while I was there. I'll have to go back for that. But encourage everybody to patronize Santana's barbershop, either in Vinyl Square or Central Square.
Okay, George?
So,
Mark?
No, I don't have anything.
Ken?
Not a liaison, but maybe a referral / question. I was approached on Friday morning, coming out of Rosie's, by a few of the residents in the area asking about the light that the state controls as you come down Route 40, coming into Vinyl Square. They're saying that prior to 6 a.m., that you could sit at that light for up to almost 8 minutes before you get a green light. It goes through 3 green light cycles in the other direction before Route 40 gets a green.
I thought they fixed that.
That's what we all thought, but
Yeah.
they said it was that way last week. So is there
I don't
someone,
understand. How can it go through different cycles without it being there?
it skips their cycle, they said. They get stuck
What other
sitting
cycle
there.
does it go through?
I'm not really sure. This is just what they told me. They were,
Probably's on a sensor.
Yeah, it
Maybe
could
the
be.
sensor's not reacting. Yeah, because that's what it would be. You have lights that won't switch unless there's a sensor.
yeah,
That's
and
probably
they said
what it
that
is.
for the last couple of weeks,
Okay.
people are just running it because they're tired of waiting. So
Okay.
it's just,
So it's the one coming from Dunstable Road, or is it just the one coming from Groton Road?
I think, well, Dunstable
They both go in.
comes into the
that's just
Groton,
right, too.
right? And then you have that light right there. So it's, I mean, technically, it's probably Groton.
Groton, okay, all right, okay.
Yep. But heading towards Vinyl Square, it's not
Yep.
heading out of
Yeah,
Vinyl Square.
Yep, inbound, okay.
So if we could have that addressed, that'd be helpful. And that's all I have.
Okay. I have just two. One is that the school committee would like the public to know that they're going to be discussing their return to school plans at their meeting tomorrow evening. And the second is from the Age-Friendly Implementation Committee. They have their domains off and running and addressing different age-friendly actions and would like to highlight a few results. The new pocket park at the intersection of North Road and Worthen Street is ready for everyone to enjoy. The Gardens for Good is providing produce to senior housing facilities and volunteer opportunities for 20 years and older adults. And the pop-up library is providing mobile library services at several locations in town. And the senior center transportation drivers have all received dementia-friendly training. I don't...
Before you
Yeah.
ask for a motion, I had one more other thing that came up. At the Pocket Park, the 2 benches,
Yes,
they're buried like this deep in the dirt, and the legs
okay,
are steel.
okay.
And so there was concern whether they were going to rust out. Do you
Okay.
think maybe they could lift them up and put like blocks underneath them so they don't rust out?
Okay, we'll get on that. Yeah, we're also working on signage too, to identify it better as a park. So we'll get them back out there.
And I don't see any press.
I'll make a motion that we go into executive session not to return to discuss the North Chelmsford Water District's Chapter 21E, Section 4A notification pertaining to PFAS at 54 Richardson Road.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Pat?
Aye.
Ken?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
George?
I'm gonna abstain.
George is abstaining, and I
Okay.
vote aye. Thank you.